Kira Smith, and I did my project over the rabies virus. Up first, we're going to talk about some general characteristics of the rabies virus. So, some general characteristics listed on the NCBI website and also along with the National Library of Medicine include that it's rod or bulleted shaped, meaning it's bacillus. Because of this shape, it is classified in the Rhabdoviridae family, and this family also includes the genus Lysovirus. Also, this virus is negative stranded and single stranded. Because of these two characteristics, mRNA must be present to transcribe the genetic material for replication of this virus. Up next, it is enveloped. The viral envelope fuses within the host's membrane, allowing the viral genome to infect the host. This envelope also protects the genetic material when the virus is traveling from host to host. Also, it's unsegmented and it's singular, so it doesn't come in chains or clusters or pairs. Up next, we're going to talk about the rabies genome. So, according to the CDC, these are the 5 viral proteins that are in the rabies virus. So, up first, we have our nucleoprotein N, our phosphoprotein P, our matrix protein M, our glycoprotein G, and our polymerase, which is L. So these viral proteins fall under the structural components of the ribonucleoprotein core and the envelope. So the ribonucleoprotein core is also called the RNP. And so in the RNP, RNA is encased by the nucleoprotein N. Your phosphoprotein and your polymerase are also associated with the RNP. The M and G proteins, which are the matrix and glyco, are associated with the envelope. The G protein forms protrusions that cover the outer surface of the envelope. This is also how the virus attaches itself to the host. The M protein is the central protein of the rhabdovirus assembly. Also, that M protein interacts with both the lipid bilayer and the RNP. Up next, we're going to talk about the multiplication of rabies. This is also according to the CDC, and this is the steps in the multiplication process. So up first, we have the attachment via G protein. This is also called adsorption. So the G protein binds to the receptor of the host cell. They bind most effectively to neural or muscle cells. Then the virus penetrates by pinocytosis and the release of the viral RNP into the cytoplasm occurs. Since the virus is single-stranded and negative, mRNA must be transcribed for virus replication. So the polymerase starts on the 3' side and encodes the N, P, M, G, and L, which are the viron proteins. So this creates full-length positive strands of the viral genome. The mRNA produced by this process also combines with ribosomes, and protein synthesis occurs at this time. So when the switch to replication occurs, the stop codons are ignored on the sequence. So this creates positive strands, and these positive strands serve as the template for the full-length negative strands of the virus. Then the last 2 steps after this replication process are assembly, which is just assembling all of the strands, and then budding, which is the step that releases the virus. So how is rabies transmitted? The most common ways of contraction are outlined by the Mayo Clinic. So contact must be direct and not airborne. So transmission can go through broken skin, mucous membranes of eyes, nose, or mouth, saliva, or in very few cases, organ donation transmission, where the organ donor had the rabies virus within him and was transmitted to the person getting the organ. So, in most cases, a rabid animal bites a human, and this provides the open wound for saliva to get in. Rabies virus becomes non-infectious when it dries and when it is exposed to light. On this slide, I have added an image that includes animals that are carriers for the rabies virus. Animals may act strangely or they may drool more than normal. Rabies is a zoonotic disease, so it can only be spread from animal to human. Geographically, rabies deaths are more common in Africa and Asia. The World Health Organization has said that in these areas, the ratio to the dog that has contracted rabies to human is 1 to 10. The potential of coming in contact with rabies virus in these developing countries is very probable, while the likelihood in the US is much lower. So these are 5 general stages of rabies. So I also found this on the NCBI website along with the US National Library of Medicine. And Charles Ruppert has laid out the following stages to the rabies virus, along with signs and symptoms that will be present within the stage. So first up, you have the incubation period. The incubation period usually lasts from 30 to 90 days, but can be as few as 5 days. The time varies due to the age of the host and how close the bite or site of contact is to the central nervous system. Up next, you have the prodromal period. This is when clinical symptoms start to arise. Some general symptoms include sore throat, headache, and anxiety. Some respiratory signs include cough and dyspnea. Some gastrointestinal symptoms include nausea, vomiting, and abdominal pain. More remarkable signs include insomnia, nightmares, psychiatric disturbances, or decreased brain condition. Also, pain or paralysis at the site of contact would suggest consideration of rabies virus. Next up, we have the acute neurological period. The acute neurological period shows central nervous system dysfunctions like memory loss, lack of coordination, or loss of sight. At the end of this phase, rapid or irregular breathing may begin. The next step is coma, which is characterized by unconsciousness. And then you have death, and this can be prolonged because of respiratory arrest. And once a person begins showing signs and symptoms, the disease nearly always causes death. So we have 2 forms of rabies, according to the World Health Organization. There are 2 types. So you have your furious rabies, and this accounts for 80% of the cases. It results in signs of hyperactivity, hydrophobia, and excitable behavior. Death occurs a few days because of cardiorespiratory arrest. And then the second form is paralytic rabies, which only accounts for 20% of the cases. And this form runs a longer course than furious. So the muscles gradually become paralyzed starting at the site of inoculation, and a coma develops slowly and eventually death occurs. So now we're going to talk about how the rabies virus spreads through the body. So this is according to the Bulletin Europe website, and these are the steps that they say the cycle of the rabies virus takes in our bodies. So first, the human gets bit by an animal, and this starts the incubation period. So the virus then persists in the muscle for long periods of time. The virus gets attached via G protein cell receptors and amplifies in muscle cells and macrophages. The amplification in these muscle fibers is critical in the pathogenesis because it helps gain access to the peripheral nervous system. Up next, there's a rapid ascending movement by binding to neuronal receptors like nicotine acetylcholine receptors that result in reaching the CNS. Then the virus migrates even closer to the CNS through sensory and motor axons. After this, the virus begins the replication process explained a few slides ago. This replication process first starts in the dorsal root ganglion and then progressively moves through the central nervous system. The virus can infect neurotransmitters in the brain, such as serotonin, GABA, and they can cause a dysfunction of a sodium potassium ion channels in the body. So, treatment of rabies is what we're going to talk about next, and this is according to the Mayo Clinic website. These are the following steps they say that you should take if you think you have come in contact with rabies. So, first off, identification of the animal is crucial because it is very hard to know whether the animal has the virus and has transmitted it to you. You will most likely receive a series of shots if the animal is identified as a common carrier of the rabies virus. While preparing for the shots, you should thoroughly wash your hands and the site. This may help wash away particles of the virus. The first shot you will receive includes the rabies immune globulin shot to prevent the virus from infecting you. Some of these injections are given near the site of the bite and as soon as possible after the occurrence of the bite. Next, you will receive a series of rabies vaccinations to help your body identify and fight the virus. These infections occur over a 14-day period and they include 4 injections. Keep in mind that there is really no effective treatment and only a small number of people have survived the rabies virus once signs and symptoms arise. So, some current news on the rabies virus, according to Science Daily. So, you guys may be asking, what are we doing today to come up with ways to effectively fight this virus? So, scientists at the Pasteur Institute are tackling this almost impossible job. So, these are the 2 main structures that they're focusing on in their studies: the glycoprotein on the outer surface of the rabies virus and the RBC20 antibody. So, some people may think that since we don't see rabies virus as often in the United States, it isn't a problem. Rabies is still responsible for approximately 60,000 deaths per year in Africa and Asia, according to the World Health Organization. The first vaccine was developed 130 years ago by Louis Pasteur, and many improvements have been made since then, but work is still being done to effectively treat this virus. So, as we know, the glycoprotein G is responsible for the entry of the virus into the host. No structural data are available for this surface glycoprotein. Researchers from the virology unit at the Institute of Pasteur and the neuropathology unit at the college have found that the antibody RVC20 recognizes and binds to the G protein. Researchers saw that the RVC20 involves highly conserved features of the viral glycoprotein, and this rationalizes the broad reactivity among the strain. They further saw that the RBC20 blocks membrane fusion between the virus and the cell. These new findings could provide therapeutic applications in cases where the virus has already entered the nervous system. Like we talked about on a few slides earlier, the G protein attaches to many different receptors like neuromuscular junctions. If the G protein can't attach at the junction, then it can't ascend to the spinal cord or motor neurons. This antibody would keep the virus more local and in one area rather than the presence being throughout the body. Up next, we're going to talk about a presidential candidate and what happened to her in the rabies virus vaccine. So you may be asking, rabies is still happening in America? Well, Colin Drury of the Independent News recorded that Joe Jurgensen, the Libertarian Party candidate, had to cancel a rally appearance after being bit by a bat during her election trail. Jurgensen explained, "I will be getting a rabies vaccine as a precaution after having been bit by a bat." In rabies cases, it is best to act fast and assume the animal has rabies because if precautions aren't taken, death could occur from inflammation of the brain. They wanted to stop the Rhabdoviridis virus and halt its spread before severe damage could happen to the brain and spinal cord. And then this is just a list of some sources that I used for my project. I hope you learned a lot about the rabies virus. Thank you.